This week's episode of the DarkRoom podcast, Unsolved Cold Cases,
we'll be talking about DB Cooper.
Yun! First try yun na.
First try, mister.
So, hi guys.
Yes, welcome to another episode of the DarkRoom podcast.
The second episode of this our new series.
Yes, so nga
From those who knew na nakinig last episode, yung the Jack the
Ripper episode natin.
Right now is
ibang take.
Bagong topic na naman.
Pahinga na muna tayo sa mga murder
tsaka heinous crimes.
Ito
more on
na muna to.
Parang engine plan robbery heist.
Heist.
Parang money heist. Ano yung sa Lakasa di Papel? Anong pangalan? Anong kanta yun?
Basta yun eh.
Hindi ko na alam. So right now,
Bella Ciao. So yun. This week's episode yun nga, as what we have said, yung ating topic for today's episode is isa sa mga ito mystery pa rin sa halos sa American history ng isa to sa
ito yung hijacking most successful hijacking with robbery
na
sa US American history.
Aside lang ba to kaila sino nga ulit? John Dillinger ganun.
Iba pa yan.
Mas
kasi ito hindi siya nahuli.
Oo nga.
Nakuha tapos pinaggasto pa niya yung government ng ilang taon.
Yes, so yun nga, yung pag-uusapan natin is DB Cooper na ikwento sa atin ni Sir Rick.
That's me again.
Rick and Morty.
This week, Rick and Morty. Okay. Let's go.
Simulan mo na.
DB Cooper, also known as Dan Cooper, criminal in 1971 who hijacked a commercial plane traveling from Portland, Oregon to Seattle, Washington, and later parachuted out of the aircraft when the ransom money. An extensive manhunt ensued, but the hijacker never identified or caught, resulting one of the greatest unsolved mysteries in US history. The man used the alias Dan Cooper, but in the subsequent news reporting, a reporter misheard the name as DB Cooper, which became widely used.
So parang yung
mali lang yung DB
fake
Cooper.
News lang.
Kasi yung ginamit na alias
parang Dan ata talaga.
Dan talaga.
So Dan talaga yung ginamit.
Yun yung nilagay niya sa
pagbili ng
ticket.
So yun.
So here,
saan mo ba una tong na pakinggan? Ako sa nung nanonood ako ng Prison Break.
Yung sa Prison Break.
Oh, yung matanda doon.
Siya yung sinabi
parang yung isa doon sa season 1 pa lang. Pero matanda doon.
Parang ginawa nilang
parang reference na DB Cooper siya. Tapos I think nung nakatakas sila doon. Spoiler alert sa mga hindi pa nakapanood.
Nakatakas Prison Break.
Nakatakas sila doon. Tapos yung first time nila na nakatakas, yung pera na nakuha ni DB Cooper, yun yung ginamit nila pang gasto sa
So nahuli pa rin sila.
Nahuli din sila eventually.
Kasi Mark yan Di ba Mark? Oh.
Oh.
Then, on Thanksgiving Eve, November 24, 1971, a middle-aged man carrying a black attache case approached the flight counter of Northwest Orient or Airlines in Portland International Airport. He identified himself as Dan Cooper. Yun na nga sabi niya, Dan Cooper. And used cash to purchase a one-way ticket on flight 305, a 30-minute trip north to Seattle. Cooper boarded the aircraft, a Boeing 727-100, and took seat at 18C. 18E by one account, 15D by another. So
parang walang dito, specific
kung saan siya nakaupo.
I think parang ano na lang yun. Parang
saan ba na nakalag? Parang hindi pa sila yata nung time na yun na parang palaging fully book yung na kailangan doon ka lang nakaupo sa
so pwede
palipat-lipat
or parang tawag dito sa account sa mga accounts lang
nagkakamali-mali. Tagal na. So and he ordered a drink, bourbon and soda.
Speaking of drink and drinking water. Hydrate, guys.
Eyewitness describe a man in his mid-40s wearing a business suit and a black tie and white shirt. Flight 305 approximately 1/3 full. Yun na. So
hindi masyado
hindi masyado kung saan talaga siya nakaupo. Departed Portland on schedule at 2:50 p.m. After takeoff, Cooper
Philippine
handed
Standard Time ba to? Yes.
Hindi. Parang iba na.
Pacific Standard Time ata.
Mas malapit yung answer yung
after mo Philippine Standard Time talaga yun.
Nasa nasa dun sa gumawa nito American article. After takeoff, Cooper handed the stewardess Schaffner a note. At that time, men traveling alone commonly slip phone numbers or hotel room numbers to flight attendants.
Ooh.
merong may chicks tapos dito ito number ko. Itong number ko sa
call me.
And then Cooper but Schaffner ignored it and placed the note in her pocket. The next time she passed, Cooper motioned for her to come closer. He told her that she better read the note and warned that he had a bomb. Nodding towards his suitcase, Schaffner then went.
Pasasabugin ko to. Basahin yan. Pasasabugin ko to.
Parang sobrang gusto na talaga niya yung stewardess na ba?
Ano ba yung nakasulat mo?
Okay. Then the stewardess Schaffner went to the galley and read the note. She showed it to the other flight attendant, and together they hurried to the cockpit to show the pilot. After he read the note, the pilot immediately contacted air traffic control. They in turn contacted the Seattle police, who informed the FBI. The FBI placed an urgent call to the airline's president. The airline's president from the Donald Nairobi, who said they should comply with Cooper's demands. Doubtless, Nairobi wanted to avoid any negative publicity that such a disaster would bring. Ano ba yung nandun? Well, Cooper instructed the flight attendant to return the note.
So din yun doon, di ba? Na-inform din yung FBI, pero sinabihan sila na
gawin na lang yun.
Sundin nyo na muna yun. Sundin nyo na muna yun. Parang naman yun standard tactic ng mga tawag dito, ng mga nasa police force or what. Kasi mostly parang talaga sila, nagkikipag-bargain. Lang.
Negotiation kasi to
negotiate for
reduce casualties. Kasi syempre merong laman na ibang passenger.
Sabihin pa naman may bomba. Hindi naman makakatakbo yun.
Oo. Then
unless kung nandun si Liam Neeson. The commuter pa yun.
Oo, yung
movie yan na parang police siya
parang retired siya doon.
Hindi parang siya, parang tawag dito. Airline police yung sumasakay sila sa mga airplane.
Yung mga parang ano lang, undercover
ng mga pulis. Tapos pag
Bakit siya nasa train?
Yung isa, merong non-stop. I think it's non-stop.
Non-stop ba yun?
Non-stop na palabas yun. Si Liam Neeson din. Lahat naman ata na palabas niya ganun eh. Yung kakaiba lang yung
Yung Taken.
Ganun din eh. Same lang din yun.
Yung Taken na wala. Palagi
I mean yung yung parang may something tapos gagamitin niya yung tactical niya.
magiging tactic out.
So yun. Wala lang siya. SKL.
Then Cooper instructed the flight attendant to return the note, wary of potential incriminating evidence. Ano ba yung nandun?
Nakakaano naman yun?
Nakasuat kasi evidence yun, hindi nabalik sa kanya. Because of this, the exact wording of his note is unknown. So Schaffner recalled that the handwritten ink note demanded $200,000 in cash and 2 sets of parachutes. Yun yung nakalagay sa
Bakit dalawa?
Wala. Cooper wanted these items delivered on arrival at Seattle-Tacoma airport and claimed that if they didn't comply with these demands, he would blow up the plane. Everyone who read the note agreed that it contained the phrase, "No funny business."
So, hindi ako this is all
no kidding aside, seryoso talaga siya. Hindi lang prank, pero kahit
it's a prank!
Meron ba yan, Kahit saan ka magsabi ng may bomba, uhulihin ka na ba talaga?
I think sa mga public places na
public places
tapos I think sa mga especially sa dito sa mga dito airport
yung mga public transportation
medyo sila dun parang dito
wary sila basta mga ganyan kasi magkakaroon ng panic
sino ba naman nagsasabi may dala akong bomba
yung bomba tatay na ako bumomba na ako sa hindi wala. Cooper moved next kasi mas na ngayon mas parang
pero it's not that naman it's not that far from sa time natin. It's only 1971 like couple of years pa lang.
Parang dahil yata dito mga ganito na mas strict na yung kahit magsabi ka lang ng bomba ka na parang babantayan ka na or ma-arrest
parang international law ata may something with hindi ko lang alam.
Cooper moved next to the window so that when Schaffner returned, she sat in his aisle seat. He opened his suitcase wide enough for her to get a glimpse of wires and 2 cylinders, potentially dynamite sticks. He then directed to return to the cockpit and tell the pilot to stay in the air until the money and the parachutes were ready. After receiving the message, the pilot announced over the intercom that the jet would circle before landing due to mechanical problems. Most of the passengers were unaware of the hijacking. So, buti na lang parang
kasi magiging magkaka-cause yun ng panic talaga. Like,
tsaka baka
sasabihin ng sa mga passengers na this is your captain, Kapner, meron tayong hijacker dito.
Kasi buti na lang hindi sila kasi magpapanik tapos baka pa sugurin pa ng ibang passenger si DB Cooper. Hindi na nila baka
maging cause pa yun.
Hindi na pwede naman mapuyog siya pero baka hindi nila ma-stop yung pag-detonate. Masa-stop nga nila pero White would take the risk. Then Cooper was very
buksan ko yung pinto.
Wow.
Pwede naman yun, di ba? Like,
baka walang isang ganyan
lang. Yung
parang 1 second lang agad.
Tapos
walang time parang
hindi nila
after
alam.
1 minute
well, hindi naman nila alam kung
oo nga, hindi nila alam. Kaya na lang nila. Sinunod na lang nila yung gusto nila ng why would take the risk, parang gano'n. Then Cooper was very precise about his demand for money. He wanted $200,000 in
200,000. Ano ba yung value? ngayon.
Parang times 50 sa atin,
like sa ano, hindi. Kasi for sure, may ano pa to eh. May tataas pa to eh. Yung 200,000.
Hindi ko alam sa inflation.
Sa inflation rate.
Ano na lang natin dito sa Pinas. Kasi yun lang yung alam ko. Parang ano to eh.
Kasi kung ano naman, like
hindi ko alam.
konti lang naman to. Like, sa America, mag-ano ko.
Malaki kasi yung 200,000 sa kanila. Kung
pero like,
isa ka lang, one man show lang, kaya.
Like ano, hindi ko naman, tangina 1 million na lang.
Baka kasi mabigat. Mas mabigat yung 1 million na ano. Ito nga, $20 bill, so mas marami. So meaning mas...
Bakit kaya $20 yun at $20 bill lang yung...
Ayun, ito nga. Which would weigh around 21 pounds. Yung $20 bills na 200,000. 21 pounds. Tapos, if smaller bills were used, it would add extra weight and could be dangerous for a skydive.
Ba't di na lang 100? Smaller bills.
Larger bills would weigh less, but they would be more difficult to pass.
Yan ang
kasi ma-detect, ma-trace kung saan nagamit to, saan na ano, so...
Ba't di na lang bangko yung inano niya? Well, kasi mahirap tong yan, for sure, siguro inisip niya. Mahirap ako nilang hanapin.
Yung $20 kasi
like hindi kasi kung like papasok ka sa hotel, I mean sa isang
convenience store.
Like bank. So syempre paglabas mo nun, mahahabulin ka ng mga sakyan. Police car ganun.
Eto na sa ka eh. Nag-hijack ka talaga eh.
Unless may nakasunod sa mga helicopter ganun. Ba't kaya hindi na lang sila ng helicopter? Wala ba si helicopter 1971?
Mataas yung elevation nito. Nasa, mayroon mga F-16 na ginamit. May F-16, may F-16.
Sorry naman.
May mga fighter jets, hindi helicopter yung ginamit nila. And then, he even specified that he wanted bills with serial numbers that were random, not sequential. The FBI agents gave him bills with random serial number, but made sure that all of them began with the code letter L. Bilis nilang parang saan kaya sila kumukuha ng gano'n?
Sa depository, like
sa Federal Reserve.
Sa Federal Reserve. Saan nga ulit?
Hindi parang
saan nga ulit yung sa Federal Reserve?
Hindi ko alam. Parang sa New York yun.
Nakalimutan ko. Like shit.
Tapos parang mag-order kami ng mga bank bills na na letter L lang.
Mabilis naman siguro yung like naka-system naman siguro yun. Then, withdraw ka ng pera, yun lang yung lalabas. So, puro L.
May na ginagawa. Acquiring the parachutes was a lot harder than collecting the 200,000. Tacoma's McCord Air Force Base offered to provide the parachutes, but Cooper rejected this offer. He wanted civilians' parachutes with user-operated ripcords, not military-issued ones. Seattle Cops eventually contacted the owner of a skydiving school. His school was closed, but they persuaded him to sell them for parachutes. Cooper's hijacking note did not directly explain his plan to skydive from the plane, but his demands led officials to that assumption. Siyempre, hihingi ka ng parachute, ano pang gagawin mo? Idadalan mo ng bag. Then since he had asked for an extra parachute, they assumed
baka like what if sinabi lang nilang tumalon siya, tapos nag-blend lang pala siya sa
mga workers,
sa mga tao,
or di kaya talaga siya empleyado naman. Uy,
big brain. Big brain na ba tayo?
Oo nga, tapos sasabihin
kasi like
or di kaya kontsaba talaga yung lahat ng workers sa
kasi nga hindi naman nila sinabi. Hindi alam.
Wala rin may nakakita.
Hindi alam.
Nasa labas.
Like I think sa pagkakaalam ko, hindi alam nung mga like sa na-mention mo kanina. Hindi alam nung mga ibang passengers na gano'n.
Parang yung mga staff lang yung
like, what the fuck? Baka ganun
parang conspiracy talaga siya.
Baka yun yung conspiracy doon.
Yung naisip ko rin yan kasi ayaw nila.
Actually, ngayon ko lang naisip. Hindi ko naisip.
Ayaw magpakita ni DB Cooper from people outside during nung nagland na yung, eto na, babalik tayo doon.
Balik ka na.
Balik mamaya, ano muna tayo. And then, Cooper, since he had asked for an extra parachute, they assumed he planned to take a passenger or crew member with him as an airborne hostage. They thought about using dummy parachutes for the exchange with Cooper, but didn't risk the life of a civilian. At 5:24 p.m., the ground team had the cash and the parachute, so they radioed Captain Scott and told him they were ready for his arrival.
Ano to? Napaka-famous tong ano nito, na captain nito.
Bakit?
Kasi si Scott.
Oh. Scott. Okay.
Okay ba?
Warming up. Warm up pa.
It's warm, I can feel it.
Cooper ordered that they taxi to a remote, well-lit area after they landed.
So may party doon.
Well-lit.
Yo, it's lit over here.
He had the cabin lights dimmed and ordered that no vehicle should approach the plane. He also ordered that the person who was bringing the cash and parachutes come unaccompanied. A Northwest airline employee drove a company vehicle near the plane. Cooper ordered flight attendant Tina McClough to lower the stairs. The employee
mahaba siguro mga kukunito na team.
Bakit?
Kasi McClough.
Nahuli kita doon. The employee carried 2 parachutes at that time to the stairs and handed them over to McClough. Then the employee brought the cash over in a large bank bag. Once the demands were met, Cooper released the 36 passengers and flight attendant Florence Schaffner. He did not and the flight attendant Florence Schaffner. He did not release the other flight attendant Tina McClough or the 3 men in the cockpit. I think parang dito na nangyari yun. Nagkapaligitan. Yung 36 nandun na si DB Cooper.
Tapos inano lang nila. Like,
yung cash nasa loob, parang pinasok lang tas nilabas. Tapos
may theory ako dito.
Florence McClough.
Kaano niya?
Florence Schaffner.
Dito kontsaba niya yung lahat ng
staff doon.
Staff.
No? Kasi pwede naman silang gumawa ng
36 yung, so ibig sabihin 37 di ba plus sa kanya? Yung sakay.
Hindi mo na isabi yung mga passengers. Kahit hindi mo na.
Hindi sila kasama. 36 yung 37 lahat. Pero sila lang din yung bumili ng isang ticket. So ibig sabihin hindi 36 yung sakay nun. Hindi 37 yung sakay nun, 36 lang. Tapos sinabi ng mga ng mga tag dito na hindi release lang pero nandun pa talaga siya. I mean, wala na siya doon. Mas lumipad sila.
Wala na si DB Cooper.
Wala na si DB Cooper doon.
Sa airplane. Takas na. Tapos
hindi nila alam.
Tapos
kasi for sure papalabasin naman sila noon eh. Wala naman siguro magche-check ng mga bags nila or what. Kasi nga nandun naman yung syempre.
Hindi kasi merong yung X-ray. Or baka,
wala na yun, dude.
Baka
wala
yung
na
staff
yun.
lang kasi. Staff lang yung yata yung Yung staff lang yung mga staff lang yung kakonsyaba. Kasi yung 200,000
saan nila ilalagay yung pera?
Hati-hatiin nila eh.
Alex, saan nila ilalagay yung pera?
Sa loob na, ang laki ng airplane.
No, syempre, yun. Haluglugin nun after.
Baka may mga
yun yung naisip ko. Yeah.
Yung lang, kasi yung 200,000, kung hatatiin mo yun sa 36, konti na lang.
Hindi nga kasama yung hindi kasama yung mga...
Yung mga staff lang yung gumawa.
Yung mga staff plus sa kanya.
Oo nga.
Siya yung mastermind. Sinaisip nila, 37 yung bibili nating ticket. Ay, bibili ako ng 2 ticket. So, ibig sabihin, 37 lahat plus sa akin. Pero, walang sasakay yung 37. Yung isa. So, ibig sabihin, 36 lang. So, nung pinalabas yung 36, kasama na siya doon with the money.
Baka.
Oo, di ba? Big brain.
Tapos, tinago lang niya sa CR. Tapos kukunin ng ni Florence Schaffner.
Hindi, yung nagdala ng pera, kasabwat din yun.
Parang ano eh.
Or baka tumalon lang talaga siya.
Baka tumalon talaga siya.
Dati na lang. Ito na, okay.
200,000 pa, malaking-laki yun eh. Kasi parang 5 lang sila, 5 lang yung staff doon. Kung hahati-hatiin nyo.
Hatiin nyo.
Ay, dito na pala tayo sa kabila. An FAA, wala na.
Okay.
Nandito na tayo sa lips. Kasi pinababaan niya na yung 36 niya. Or is it? Then FAA official contacted the captain and asked Cooper for permission to come aboard the jet. The official apparently wanted to warn him of the dangers and consequence of air piracy. Cooper denied this request. Cooper had Mucklow read over the instruction card for operation of the aircraft stairs. When he questioned her about them, she didn't think that they could be lowered during flight. He said she was wrong. Tinanong niya yung about sa I think interview kay Tina Mucklow, yung pinag-usapan nila. And then Cooper had chosen this flight not only for location but because of the type of the jet that was used. He knew a lot of the Boeing 727-100. Cooper ordered the pilot to remain below an altitude of 10,000 feet and to keep the airspeed below 150 knots. An experienced skydiver would easily be able to dive at 150 knots.
Sabi ng pilot pag lumilipad na sila, tapos sabi niya, ito ba, tama na ba to? These knots?
These no.
Gire.
Eat. The jet was lightweight and would have no problem flying at such a slow speed.
10,000 lang.
Through the dense air at 10,000 feet.
Medyo mababa.
Mababa, fly slow and low. Fly low, slow and low.
Parang to. Parang si Babalu.
Bakit?
Mababa.
Babalu. Cooper told the crew that he wanted to go to Mexico City. The pilot explained that the altitude and airspeed he wanted to travel, the jet wouldn't be able to travel more than 1,000 miles even with 52 gallons of fuel. With this in mind, they agreed to make a mid-stop to refuel in Reno, Nevada. Before leaving Seattle, Cooper ordered the jet be refueled. He knew that the Boeing 727-100 could take in 4,000 gallons of fuel a minute. After 15 minutes, when they weren't done refueling, Cooper demanded an explanation. The fuel crew completed the job shortly afterwards. Captain Scott and Cooper negotiated a low-altitude route called Vector 23. This route allowed the jet to fly safely west of the mountains even at the low altitude that Cooper demanded.
So obviously nag-research tong natin.
Meron siyang
knowledgeable talaga siya dun sa plane.
Knowledgeable talaga sila. Hello.
Oy. Yan ba yung natin? Ipupush natin
Parang yung theory lang natin.
Theory natin
I think parang magiging ganito yung natin, yung setup natin. Merong theories yung investigation. Tapos gagawa tayo ng sa atin. Kasi yung napapanood.
Well, malaki yung possibility ng theory natin.
Ng conspiracy.
Maybe yung lang na hindi natin
maybe DB Cooper wasn't true.
Maybe it's
doesn't
group.
Exist, but it's a group. And then Cooper also directed the captain to
DB Cooper Incorporated. DB Cooper and Sons.
Cooper also directed the captain to depressurize the cabin. He knew that a person can breathe normally at 10,000 feet and that if the cabin had equalized pressure inside and out, there wouldn't be a violent gust of wind when the aircraft stairs lowered. Aircraft.
Parang front ata yung aft eh.
Air front.
Hindi, front yun. Parang kasi sa mga barko, aft ata yung tawag yun sa
Kasi walang
isang part ng
ng aircraft.
Sa hood.
Upstairs. Hindi ko alam.
Upstairs.
Kasi ito yung nakalagay, oh. And then, after all of the flight details were figured out, the plane took off at 7:46 p.m. After taking off,
isa pa to sa mga nakikita kong na medyo sketchy. Kasi nga, late na to eh. Like, for 7, December na, di ba? November to, di ba?
Opo.
November, putang inang yan.
Yun rin yung
late na to, di ba? Late
bakit?
na to. So,
snowing na.
Tsaka like, kahit hindi mag-snow, gabi na. For sure, mahirap ng tumalon.
Si Captain America nga, tumalon eh.
Like, hindi ba? Like, mahirap na. Unless siguro if well-trained.
Or hindi talaga siya nag-exist.
O hindi siya tumalon.
O walang may tumalon. Nandun na nasa 36 na passengers na yung
big brain.
After takeoff, Cooper... nandito na tayo. After takeoff, Cooper ordered the flight attendant and the rest of the crew to stay in the cockpit. There was no peephole in the cockpit door or remote cameras installed at that time. So the crew had no idea what Cooper was doing. Yun. Medyo sketchy. Okay. At 8 p.m., a red light gave warning that a door was open. Scott asked Cooper over the intercom if there was anything that they could do for him. He replied with an angry no. That was the last word anyone heard from Dan Cooper. At 8:24 p.m., the jet genuflected as the nose dip first, followed by a correcting dip in the tail end. Scott made sure to note the spot where the dip took place, 25 miles north of Portland, near the Lewis River. The crew assumed...
Mom. Lewis. Family guy. Lewis.
Hindi ko alam yan. Hindi ko na. The crew assumed that the upstairs have been lowered and that Cooper had jumped. However, they didn't make in confirmation of their assumption.
Or didn't he?
Because they didn't want to disobey his orders to stay in the cockpit. At 10:15 p.m., the jet landed in Reno, Nevada. Scott spoke over the intercom and after receiving no response, he opened the cockpit door. The cabin was empty. Cooper, along with the money and all of his belongings, was gone. The only item left was the second parachute.
Did they ever mention that the plane was closed?
Hindi. Wala. Parang
hindi na mention.
Parang hindi. Parang bakit may inopen daw yung door ng tapos I think yung mga
or sinarado nila.
Kasi sabi nga 'di ba, ni-pressurize yung aircraft. So pag bukas ng door, hindi yung parang nakikita natin sa mga movies na parang papasok yung pero
paano nasarado?
Tapos bakit lahat ng staff pinapasok dun sa cockpit? 'Di ba yung cockpit parang yan eh, parang bagong
your cock fit on her pussy.
Cockpit. Parang tawag nito, parang iba yan sa So kung buksan yung sa likod, walang may mangyayaring sa loob ng cockpit.
Saka may naisip ko,
di ba pwedeng tinapon lang nila yung cockpit?
Paano na ma-open? Kasi for sure, di ba yung mga syempre ng hangin ibublow pa rin ng hangin. So I think medyo mahirap kasi medyo mabilis naman yung lipad ng eroplano, di ba?
Kaya nga pinahina niya lang yung
But still 10,000 feet, it's still 10,000 feet with fucking ilang kilometers per hour ba yung lipad ng eroplano?
Oo nga, yun nga.
Kahit nga yung
mga skydiving nga, gano'n naman talaga yung parang yung
pero sinasarado nila.
Hindi nga sila parang yung pilot talaga.
Sinasarado nila yun.
Sino yung
Sino nagsarado ng pinto?
Oo nga. Sino yung matapang yung
yung sarado na dito, yung lalabas yung aircon.
Kasi diba sinabi nabukas
sarado
yung light.
Sarado niyo yung pinto, lalabas yung aircon.
Sino yung matapang na lalabas ng cockpit tapos
baka sinabi lang nila.
Baka hindi rin sinabi na
baka inano lang nila sinarado nila para sabihin na kasi parang may record ata yun.
May record yan sa black box.
Sa black box na hindi naman talaga black.
Binuksan. Then
sinabi
tinapon yung isang parachute. Tapos sinaraduhan. Tapos bumalik sa loob yung
kaya sinabi iniwan lang yung isa, di ba? Oh, fuck. Are we going to solve this case?
Oh my God. Sa FBI, sa mga nanonood sa FBI,
kunin niyo po kami.
Ito na yung yata yung
well, naman siguro, for sure naisip to ng mga taga-FBI. Medyo, baka
in-investigate din yung mga...
malaki yung possibility nun na it could also be inside job or...
Kasi wala sa passengers, wala namang may nakakita sa kay DB Cooper. Yung mga ini-interview lang yung yung mga crew, yung especially yung
71, wala pa bang CCTV?
Wala silang CCTV this time.
Hindi sa airport ganun, wala pang CCTV.
Wala pa yata.
What the fuck, I don't think so,
pa.
Man. Meron na ata nun.
Wala pa yata. Hindi naman natin mahuhuli ka agad to kung may CCTV nun
Or baka kasama din yung FBI, fuck.
yung kagaya sa Now You See Me, yung lead investigator, siya pala yung mastermind tangina.
Hindi na alam, like wala naman tayong we're just guessing kung ano talaga yung nangyari.
Lakas natin mag-isip na.
Ito tingnan mo, high speed built na iba pala.
Okay.
Dito na iba pala.
No one heard from Cooper again. All subsequent investigation failed to prove whether or not he survived the fateful jump. During the hijacking, the police attempted to follow
the hijacking or the Norjack. Norjack ata yung tawag.
Norjack Northwest hijacking incident.
Kasi sa area kung saan.
Hindi yung yung airline companies Northwest.
Northwest hijacking.
Norjack.
Kasi nga,
Torjack. Yung sa atin, Torjack lang. Hindi.
Jackhammer.
Raymore, shout out.
Shout out kay Raymore, the Jackhammer boy.
Well,
nag-jackhammer pa lang.
Yung police nag-attempt talaga na habulin yung plane.
Nag-jackhammer pa lang.
And they knew na
nag-jackhammer pa lang.
While they originally andiyan ba si Sir Remy sa loob?
F06.
And while they originally used F-116 106 fighter jet, these planes built to go at high speeds up to 1,500 miles per hour proved to be useless at lower speeds. The police then co-opted the Air National Guard Lockheed T-33 but before Lockheed but before they were able to catch up to the hijack plane, but Cooper had already jumped.
Or didn't he?
Or didn't he? The inclement weather the night prevented the police from searching the grounds until the next day. That Thanksgiving and for several weeks afterward,
baka naisip nila to kasi nga parang binigyan lang sila ng pera. Hindi sila mahuhuli.
Yung
thanks for giving us money.
Yan. Okay. And then just in case the hijacker used his real name,
hydrate,
but no one had no luck. One of the early resorts, however, would prove to have a lasting impact on the case. A police record for an Oregon man named DB Cooper was discovered and considered a possible suspect. Although he was quickly cleared by the police, an eager and careless member of the press accidentally confused the man's name for the alias given by the hijacker. This simple mistake was then repeated by another reporter, quoting that information, and so on until the entire media was using the catchy moniker. And so the original Dan Cooper became known as DB for the rest of the investigation.
At least DB Cooper naman medyo cool naman pakinggan.
Kahit
Kasi si
Dan Cooper.
Dan is a fucking
Parang Dan.
Napaka lang nun, napaka basic na guy.
Dan? Sino may ano?
Dan? So many Dans out there.
Charges for air piracy were filed in 1976 and still stand today. But on February 10, 1980,
Dito na tayo sa
investigation.
Ano to? 9 years after na.
An 80-year-old boy found bundles of $20 bills with serial numbers matching the ones from the Cooper stash in the Columbia River. Some people believe this evidence helps support the theory that Cooper didn't survive the fall. The discovery of these bundles led to new searches around the area. However, an eruption of Mount St. Helens in May 18, 1980 likely destroyed any remaining clues about the Cooper.
What if kung kinuha lang niya yung iba, nilagay na yung konti doon.
Tapos
para ma-mislead lang yung tao.
Baka lang.
Na namatay siya but still
iniwan niya yung ibang yung hati ng ibang crew sa kanya.
If totoo man na isang tao lang to, done by single person only. Baka ganun yung ginawa niya.
Just parang hindi siya pumunta ng Columbia. Kung pumunta lang siya ng Columbia River para mag-plant lang ng evidence. Or di kaya itong bata na to yung Conchaba.
Or siya yung apo.
Siya, lahat na lang na natin.
Apo siya ni ni sino?
Anak siya ni D.B. Cooper.
Apo siya ni Schaffner. William.
Shatner yun.
Shatner. Ay, sorry naman.
Okay. Over the years, many
Point blank lang yun. Point blank.
Saan?
Because he was shot near car.
Wala konti. Di ko na-gets kagad. Over the years, many have confessed to being Dan Cooper. The FBI has quietly examined some of these cases but has yet to turn up anything useful.
As if naman parang ano ba yung makukuha nila? Yo, ako si DB Cooper, guys.
For popularity lang. Parang ganun.
Okay.
And then they checked the fingerprints of those who confessed against the unknown prints collected from the hijacked plane. So far, none of them had been a match. Nasaan ka na?
I think pagkamali ako sa okay, go.
Pero yun na.
Meron ako dito isang page A third letter mail by Oregon Police.
Nagkamali ka din. Sa susunod pa yan na page.
Okay.
Ito, second letter. Last third letter.
Sige, go.
Okay. In August 2011, Marla Cooper made claims that Dan Cooper was her uncle, L.D. Cooper. Sino ba yung Parang meron akong rapper yata ng L. Cool J pala yun. Hindi pala. L.D. Cooper. And then, Marla claimed that she overheard a conversation saying their money problems were over and that they had hijacked a plane. Somewhat contradictory. However, she also explained that no money was ever recovered since her uncle lost it while he was jumping.
Nakakatawa naman dun. Like, ito na yung makakaano sa akin.
Pakapera na
kami. Pinag-aralan niya, puta. Kailangan, winay niya yung mga $20 bills. Ito lang yung kailangan. Doing the math and scrubbling over thousands of hours para makompute. Ito yung kailangan ko, 200,000 lang.
Para di mabigat sa akin.
Oo. Tapos hindi ako mahirapan. Tapos tumalon siya po. Nabuksan!
Sabi na, ano na lang tayo.
I think tatanggalin ko ata yung parachute ko.
Ko eh. And then, although many people have identified Dan Cooper as one of their yung iba nagko-confess, yung iba pinsan na nila
siguro tawag dito, baka di ko alam kung anong trip nila.
And then
baka astig to.
Di ko. And then although many people have identified Dan Cooper as one of their long lost relatives, Marla Cooper claim seems to come closest to the truth. One of the flight attendants on that flight even identified LD Cooper as looking similar to the hijacker. This theory, however, is not one of the authorities deem likely. Okay. And then, in the decades that followed the Brazen Act, the Bureau eliminated all but 2 of 1,000 suspects in the case.
So, marami talaga.
Sobrang, so, very vast.
Kasi nga maliit nga yung mga mga clues na pwede nilang gamitin sa pag-identify. So medyo lalaki talaga yung tawag dito, yung demographic ng mga suspects nila.
And then the most substantive leads included 5,800 of the ransom money found by a boy in 1980. Yun nga, sabi. And then,
ang dami din
5,000.
5,000 din yun.
And along with the money, there were taunting letters received by several newspapers, several US newspapers. The letters in particular have offered tantalizing clues to the identity of the man behind the alias who got away with what would have been 1.2 million today. Yun na.
Yeah.
Tanong mo sa akin kanina.
Nasagot
natin. Hindi ko alam pero nasagot ng script natin.
So in current inflation rate.
Inflation 1.2
million na po yung 200,000. So medyo malaki. Like, ilang din. Almost 5 times.
Oo. Nag-increase. And then at least 500,000 500%. At least 6 letters typed, handwritten, and made using random style cut-out letters were sent to several newspapers soon after the hijacking, all claiming to be from Cooper. The FBI considered most to be hoaxes, but intriguingly, they held back the last 2 letters from the public until the 2000, which may indicate they took most far more seriously. A first letter signed DB Cooper were sent from Oakdale, California to the Rainier Evening Gazette and was received in November 29, 1971.
Only a year later.
And then using letters cut and paste from a Sacramento Bee newspaper, it read, "Attention, thanks for the hospitality," was in a wrap. A second letter, handwritten and signed DB Cooper, was postmarked November 30, 1971 and was sent to the Vancouver province in British Columbia with the following message: "The composite drawing on page 3 as suspected by the FBI did not represent the truth. I enjoyed the Grey Cup game. I'm leaving Vancouver." So meaning, after ng heist, after ng hijacking, merong mga na-receive yung mga newspaper letters ba?
Mahirap
Taunting
din.
parang Jack the Ripper.
Mahirap din kasi nga kahit nga dun sa Jack the Ripper na meron nga tawag dito, imagine meron pa dun like nag-send pa ng kidney ng isang tao. Prank lang pala. Medyo mahirap mahirap i-justify yung mga ganong I mean, i-prove kung galing ba talaga yun. Or hindi natin alam, baka nga.
Baka lang. Hindi natin alam. And a third letter mailed in the Northern Oregon in December 1, 1971 was received by the Portland Oregonian. Using letters cut from a Playboy magazine, it read, "I'm alive and doing well in hometown. P.O. The system beats the system." Teka lang. System beats a system.
Ooh.
So meaning system is a
Nasa system, so ibig sabihin kasama sila
inside
doon.
job. Baka lang. Then letter number 4, received by the Reno Evening Gazette, was mailed December 1 but from the Sacramento, California area. Pasted from letters, it read, "Plan ahead for retirement income," and was signed D.B. Cooper. A fifth letter signed D.B. Cooper, brimming with taunts, was postmarked December 11, 1971 and sent to the New York Times, Seattle-Times, Los Angeles Times, and the Washington Post. The FBI released its contents after a private investigative team led by a documentary filmmaker, Thomas Colbert, filed a Freedom of Information Act request. Yung nakalagay doon, Sirs, I knew, quoting, "Sirs, I knew from the start that I won't be caught," the letter read. "I didn't rob Northwest Orient because I thought it would be romantic, heroic, or any of other euphemisms that seems to attach the situations of high risk. I'm no modern day Robin Hood. Unfortunately, I do have only 14 months to live."
Oh, so anong tawag dito? Heisenberg.
Parang merong
Breaking Bad.
Breaking Bad na siya. Hindi ko pa nare-reference yun, pero soon.
Breaking Bad na.
My life has been one of hate, turmoil, hunger, and more hate. This seemed to be the fastest and most profitable way to gain a few fast grains of peace of mind. I don't blame people for hating me for what I have done, nor do I blame anybody for wanting me to be caught and punished. Though this can be never happen, here are some, not all of these things working against the authorities. I'm not a boasting man. I left no fingerprints. I wore a toupee. I wore putty makeup. They could add or subtract from the composite 100 times and not come up with an accurate description. And we both know it. I've come and gone on several airline flights already, and I'm not holed up in some obscure backwoods town. Neither am I a psychopathic killer. As a matter of fact, I've never even received a speeding ticket. Thank you for your attention. End quote. Ito medyo ang daming details na binigay.
Medyo mahaba yung message niya.
Oo nga.
Sulat niya eh.
Ito na yata yung ito na yung parang, hindi pinakita ng FBI kasi parang nila na parang meron siyang
malaki yung
baka bucket list lang niya to. 14 months to live, parang
mamatay si Morgan Freeman tsaka si Jack Nicholson.
Parang na lang sila
mga bucket list lang.
Na lang sila ng ganito. Ang naman,
at least medyo edgy yung last isa sa mga niya.
Hindi siya hindi
wala lang, law-abiding citizen ako, guys.
Ito tapos
gusto ko lang maka-experience
ganito.
Medyo dito
parang
pumuputok yun.
Adrenaline rush, parang
rush sa katawan mo.
Colbert's team found codes in the 5th and 6th letter, including the numbers 717-171-684, which they deciphered as "I'm Lieutenant Robert W. Rockstraw." Rockstraw may bagong pangalan. Kanina si LD Cooper, ngayon ito si Rockstraw. A Vietnam War vet and former US paratrooper who died in 2019. He denied and refused to discount himself as being the infamous hijacker.
Dapat hijacker lang daw.
Bakit skyjacker?
Kasi mataas yung aeroplano. So hijacker.
According to the Oregonian, the FBI investigated and cleared Rockstraw in the late 1970s. Okay.
Bakit siya nasama doon?
Kasi merong code, tapos na-deciphered yun. And then a 6th letter mailed March 28, 1972, a year after, from Jacksonville, Florida, to the Portland, Oregonian, signed A. Richman, read, "This let you know I am not dead, but really alive, and just got back from the Bahamas. Ay,
bakasyon pa eh.
Bakasyon siya. So you silly troopers up there can stop looking for me. That is just how dumb this government is. I like your articles about me, but you can stop them now. DB Cooper is not real. I had to do something with the experience Uncle taught me. So here I am, a very rich man. Uncle gave too much of it to world idiots and no work for me. I had to do it to relieve myself of frustration. I went out of the system and saw a way through good old Uncle. Now you know I am going around the world and they will never find me because I am smarter than the system's lackey cops and lame duck leaders. Now it is Uncle's turn to whip and pay one of its own cash for a change. And please tell the lackey cops DB Cooper is not my real name. Again, end quote. Again, ayun yan.
Ay, sorry.
So, eto very taunting talaga yung ginagawa niya as like pareho rin nung kay Jack the Ripper.
It only made the investigation a lot more difficult kasi nga maraming nagpo-post,
nagsesend ng mga
kasi
from different
baka nag-aano lang talaga sila like,
hindi nila may trace kaagad.
Or baka trip lang nila ganun kasi hindi naman natin maiwasan yung mga
magsesend lang na
medyo kaya isa sa mga reasons kung bakit medyo hindi nga siya
nahuli.
Kasi nga they were only looking for a single person.
Baka marami talaga sila.
Talagang hinahanap nila.
Pero I think yun rin yung hindi nakakatulong sa pag-investigate kasi nagiging publicized yung isang case tapos meron na yung mga trolls.
Yan nga may ano yan eh. I think may masamang effect yun. But still meron din naman magandang effect kasi if medyo marami naghahanap
mas maraming nakakatulong.
Kasi nga like,
pero marami rin yung hindi tumutulong.
Ganun naman talaga yan eh.
Pero nasa training rin yata ng yan eh.
It's either mahanap nyo dahil may tumulong sa inyo or maybe on your own lang talaga. Pero
meron ring mga trolls na
hindi naman ito maiwasan eh.
Pero yung
pero like posting for somebody na made a crime like parang ang hirap naman ata. Try mo kayo maging poser ng isang
criminal para for edge lang.
Wala, lang din naman nila
mahuli eh. Tapos kung hulihin nila ako, hindi naman nila ako mapapatunayan. And then, yun yan. Again, Colbert's team says this letter is coded to say, I'm Lieutenant Robert W. Rockstro. DB Cooper is not my real name. I went out of the system and saw a way by hijacking one jet plane. Meron na lang nakitang sa 6th letter. But the identity of Cooper and the author or authors of the letter officially remains a mystery. FBI spokesman Ayn Sandalo Dietrich told the Reno Gazette Journal in 2014 that the letters were sent to the FBI laboratory in the Washington DC for analysis, but nothing was found. It was never proven if the actual hijacker wrote the letters.
Yun nga, na-mention natin kanina. Mahirap din yun ma-prove eh. So, baka binabasa lang nila, hindi naman ito may...
Tapos yan eh, time stalling eh. Stall talaga yung masasayang yung oras ng kasi i-check nila lahat.
Ipa-fact check nila yun. Then for sure, iba-background nila. Kasi for sure, makikita din naman makikita ng FBI or sino may nag-investigate nun. Yung sino yung nag-send nun. I think naman sila, may capable naman ata nilang ma-backtrack yung tag dito. Kung sino nagpadala, ganito, ganyan. But still,
sayang ang oras.
Mahirap.
Tapos, resources rin. And then,
syempre, yung nagbabasa nun, resources yung tawag sa kanila din.
Human resources.
Tsaka yung ini-snack nilang pandesal.
Yung kape.
Sir, gutom na kami dito. Wala ba tayong pakape dyan?
Yung overtime ng mga detectives.
OT to ha.
So ito na yung mga list ng mga mga possible suspects
na
identify. Then ito una si Robert Backstroke. Then back in the 1970s, a pilot and former paratrooper Robert Backstroke had a whole lot going on. Grand theft,
GTA,
$75,000 worth of bad checks, and possible murder of his stepfather were just a few of the infractions for which authorities nabbed him. After being acquitted of the murder charge, Rackstraw saw fit to fake his own death in 1978 while logging a false Mayday call from a rented plane in Northern California. He spent 2 years in prison for check fraud and theft of an aircraft. In the 2016 book, The Last Master Outlaw, authors Thomas J. Colbert and Thomas Colbert and Thomas Scaluzzi presented evidence gathered during a 5-year investigation into Rackstraw's past. They concluded he was the legendary hijacker, a claim Rackstraw lawyers called the stupidest thing I've ever heard. Rackstraw died from a heart condition on July 9, 2019. So yun na. Isa parang may background kaya tapos nakita rin sa code ng letters. Hindi ko lang parang siya yung pinakamalapit kasi siya yung nandun sa isang letter. Bakit naman yung ilalagay yung pangalan niya dun? Or baka siya yung nagpadala?
Baka finiframe lang siya.
Hindi natin alam. And then another one is Richard McCoy Jr. Richard McCoy
for the si Backstroke. Ano to? Backstroke. Yung siguro yung kung medyo compelling lang na dun sa history niya is paratrooper siya. Meron siyang tawag dito, training sa skydiving. So I think meron din namang kahit papaano tawag dito possibility na siya. Hindi natin alam, like
baka lang. Tapos nandun siya sa mga letters. Baka naman siya ilalagay.
Baka sinulat niya yung sarili niya.
Ay, para poster lang yata to. Pero kasi meron siyang background ng mga grand robbery ba. And then another is Richard McCoy Jr. On April 7 in 1972, a man traveling under a fake name boarded a Newark to Los Angeles flight. Shortly after takeoff, he handed a note to one of the flight attendants. The note demanded $500,000 and 4 parachutes. If these were not furnished, the man, a seasoned skydiver and helicopter pilot, would bomb the plane. The 727 landed and refueled. The hijacker exchanged passengers for cash and parachutes en route to the next destination. He jumped from rear stairs to freedom. Sounds familiar? So, few months after the D.B. Cooper heist, eto si McCoy, gumawa siya ng parang
baka lang siya, baka na-inspire.
Parang na-inspire siya sa
or
ginawa niya.
Did he?
Parang may gusto yata niya rin.
Sabi niya ata, naubos ang pera.
Parang kulang yata yung 200.
Tangina ba 200,000 lang yung kinuha ko last time.
Tapos nahulog pa yung iba. Yung 5K nahulog sa sa Columbia River.
Nahulog yung 5K. Tangina yan.
Kuha ko ng
ulit nga ulit ako. Gawin ko ng 500.
This hijacking occurred less than 5 months after the D.B. Cooper incident, leading many to suspect that the same culprit may have been responsible. The perpetrator of the April crime, Richard McCoy Jr. was convicted of air piracy and received a 45 years prison sentence. On August 10, 1974, however, he and some fellow inmates hijacked a garbage truck and escaped their Pennsylvania penitentiary. When the FBI finally tracked McCoy down in Virginia 3 months later, a shootout left him dead. So, wala lang, baka na-inspire lang siya dun sa or hindi
or
natin
siya talaga yun. Hindi natin alam.
Kasi mas malakas yung natin, yung mga staff talaga yung gumawa nun.
Medyo, paano pa rin ako? Doon pa rin naglilin yung ano.
Yung parang ano lang, parang inside job lang. And then, third is Sheridan Peterson. A more under-the-radar suspect through the years has been Sheridan Peterson, who fell under suspicion under a week of the skyjacking, but wasn't interviewed by the FBI until decades later. Peterson, a former Boeing employee, worked in the department that wrote the flight manual for the Boeing 727 that was hijacked, a familiarity that might explain how the perpetrator knew that the aircraft had back stairs he could open and jump from. An accomplished skydiver, Peterson worked for a time as a smoke jumper in Montana. He also worked at the Issaquah Skydive Center in the late 1960s, at the same place that would later provide parachutes used by Cooper in his escape.
Ito pag tinatawag dito, pag tinatawag mo sa asawa mo.
Ano?
Issaquah.
Oh yes, ako kaya. And then, unlike descriptions of Cooper, however, Peterson has blue eyes, not brown. And while Cooper had chain smoke on the flight, Peterson is not known to have been a smoker. At that time of the hijacking, Peter told the authorities he was living with his wife and family in Nepal, although he offered no definitive proof that he hadn't traveled back at the time of the hijacking.
I think ito isa sa mga napanood ko sa sa isang episode na isa sa mga prime suspect nila. Kasi ang tawag dito sa pagkakaalam ko, mayroon atang naiwang tie doon sa loob ng before siya tumalon. Iniwan niya yung black tie niya, tapos sinuot niya yung infamous goggles. Parang divers, hindi ko alam. Tapos yung few years after nung incident na doon, parang tawag dito, pinag-aralan yung tie na yun na may nakita silang mga DNA. Hindi, mga elements doon sa tie na nakikita lang sa
hindi, yung isa to.
Sa isa ba yun?
Oo, sa isa yan.
Saan ba?
Ito si Kenneth.
Ito yung susunod?
Oo.
Wala naman siya tatrabaho doon?
Hindi, mechanic siya.
Saan ba yun?
Oo, ito, dito siya. Dito yun. Dito yun, sa kanya to. Nakita yung mga elements na inaano lang sa...
Wala dito.
Hindi ko nilagay dyan. Hindi ko nilagay. Kasi,
okay. Kala ko siya kasi wala.
Okay,
boy, spoiler alert. Meron isa dito, si Kenneth.
Si Kenneth, Kenneth Christensen had more directly to the Cooper. He had worked for the Northwest, the hijacked airline, as a mechanic, flight attendant, and purser. Kenneth's brother Lyle claims that when Kenneth was on his deathbed in 1994, he said, "There's something you should know, but I cannot tell you." So yun, ito yung sinasabi
mo. Yun ang nakita ko, yung tie.
Tie na merong strontium.
May mga elements doon.
Elements na hindi
nakikita lang sa isang hindi
certain
siya
fields.
Hindi siya available sa
Tas more on sa
then na found out nila
aircraft field.
Nakita nga nila
engineering.
Nakita nila na dun.
Bakit meron siyang ganito, ganyan? Kenneth yun. And then, sabi nga, there's something you should know but I cannot tell you. Hindi ko
meron na akong di ko sasabihin.
And Kenneth had been a military paratrooper. This year, after the D.B. Cooper incident, hijacking, despite being a modest flight attendant salary, he bought a house in cash. So, parang
So, I'm leaning on to this man
kasi
doon pa rin ako sa
marami sila.
Baka siya yung mastermind.
We are DB Cooper. Confession.
The Boys.
And then yun nga, in July 2016, the FBI officially announced that they would no longer be allocating active resources to continuing the wala na silang
Just
wala
open
nang
lows.
pera. Parang na ano yung 200,000, yung 100
yung resources sa ano,
sa budget. Ano siya, ginagawa
Kasi
mo pa rin ba yung investigation na yan? Nauubos na yung budget natin
ilang taon na, 40 years, tama ba?
45 years. Almost 45.
Kasi nga na ano din ata, sa pagkakaalam ko, marami silang marami silang mga suspects na
winaldas nila ng
kasi nga syempre ano nila
i-check talaga nila.
To the point na through time dahil dun sa ano sa dito sa pag-investigate nila na nasabi pa nga sa isang video na napanood namin na umabot na nga sa 40 feet yung yung piles of tawag dito
towards the investigation. Yung ano nalakap nila
papers and shits and evidences na para lang
mahuli yung
resources
kasi
nila.
pride yan hindi nila nahuli yung
well medyo ano din naman aside from pride siguro it's also kasi
bring justice parang ganun. Kasi nakaano sila
if he was not brought into to prison din naman. Medyo ano din naman yun. Flawed yung ano.
Yung system.
Oo.
The system beats the system.
Yun na nga.
And then, yun nga, this does not mean that they had...
Basta.
This does not mean that they had solved the case of Cooper's identity though. The leading theory by investigators is that Cooper did not, in fact, survive his jump, although his extensive knowledge of the plane system initially led police to believe he was a professional skydiver. They have since concluded that a jump in such a weather conditions over a rootless patch of Washington wilderness in the middle of the winter, while wearing a business casual attire, was a risk of no expert would be stupid enough to take. The fact that the bag of matching ransom money was found left in the stream further suspects the theory that it did not survive.
So that only makes since wala na ngayon hindi na nga to pinupursue yung na ma-close to, that only makes the case unsolved.
Still remains a mystery.
So yun, it could be naman na dahil nga sa rough weather that time.
Tapos hindi pa siya.
But hindi naman siguro excuse yung suot niya.
I think
Ba't naman? Kasi baka sa PUBG nga
sa PUBG mga shorts na.
Naka-short lang
Pek shorts yung gamit
in real life, wala naman sigurong magkukumit ng naka-jumping nakaagad.
Parang alam nilang tatalo parang tatalo.
Doy, ba't nilisot mo? Wala lang. Ganito.
Mamaya
na to, ganito, ganyan. Wala.
Hindi natin alam kasi sabi pa nga nila, alam yung mga FBI, akala nila professional siya. Kaso, yung binigay na sa kanila na parachute kasi is yung isang bag nakatahi, zoom shot. Tapos yung isa, walang maneuvering.
Isa nga dun sa malaking palaisipan na siguro naisip nilang baka he did not actually survive the kasi nga hindi na ma-maneuver yung plus the fact na medyo
yung weather pa.
Weather and also yung sa terrain medyo maraming mga puno-puno daw doon that time. So malaki din yung chance na to assume na baka namatay talaga siya during dun sa or it could be also done by
professional skydiver
or it could be done also by multiple persons na made this heist unsolved kasi nga na they were able to pull this off na hindi naging kasi hindi rin naging suspect yung iba like hindi nila naisip na it could be a conspiracy na ganyan na inside job ganyan they were all leaning to the fact that it was only done by a single person only Pero hindi nila hindi nila na entertain na.
Sobrang kinagat nila yung yung bit na isa lang talaga yung gumawa nito. Parang hindi yata nila pinursue yung conspiracy na baka lang. Well, hindi natin alam.
Well, yun na, hindi natin alam. Maybe pinag-aralan nila but it only led to nothing lang. Like,
baka dead end.
Dead end lang talaga, ganyan. If he was able to survive, kudos to him. Like, yo, props to you, man. You pulled it off.
Tapos hindi ka
or he didn't pull it off kasi yung sinot niya yung suit na he was not able to pull that motherfucking parachute off.
Wala.
Dead to the ground.
Patay. Tapos natabunan siya ng mga snow. Pero yung parachute hindi kasi nakita eh. Walang may nakitang.
So yun na nga, medyo malaki nga yung medyo mysterious ngayon. Mysterious nga yung how this case was done. So napakahirap siguro nilang hindi nga nila nahirapan talaga yung FBI to identify kung sino. Ang ko lang baka wala silang wala silang CCTV that time. Wala pa bang CCTV no 1971. We were not able to search for kung kailan naging
or baka yung
naging available yung CCTV.
Merong mga cameras pero yung
yung record
malalaki talaga. Yung sa mga
pero
lang.
I think
yung mga dito sa mga planes wala pa.
Siguro but sa airport hindi nila na check. Wala sila. For sure tiningnan nila 'yon. Maybe wala pa talaga I think they're not that dumb enough to check if may CCTV. After 30 years sabihin na 35 years sabihin nila, ay may CCTV pala hindi natin na-check.
Tsaka sasabihin na malalaman naman nila. Sasabihin naman nila na
baka wala
nakita
pa.
namin ito yung picture niya. Yung pinapakita lang sa atin is yung sketch lang. So I think wala talaga, wala
infamous sketch
from Portland to kasi baka maliit lang na yun. Maliit lang na airport nga.
Parang
commercial lang. So that's our episode on
napaka-interesting interesting
ng mga theories na lumalabas.
Ito nga tawag dito. Parang may pa rin ata ako dito. Ano nga tawag doon? Yung statute of limitation na yung sa piracy.
Yung air piracy.
Parang later lang ata na parang ganun na may statute of limitation na parang 5 years lang ata.
Yung air piracy
parang 5
he
years.
was charged by
The statute of limitation is parang pag lumagpas sa certain years for na hindi ka pa talaga mawawala na yung mawawala na yung charges against you. Tama ba?
Kaya binigay nila yun.
Ba?
Oo.
Tama ba?
Yun nga. Tapos binigyan sila chinarge siya ng
iba na ata parang
Hobbs Act na yun
yung
hindi pwedeng mag-extort, hindi ka pwedeng mag-extort ng money.
That made that
forever
yung case na yun.
Kaya hanggang ngayon. Pero wala nang may nagpo-pursue ng
So yun, meron kayo natutunan.
Nakabinbin siya sa
the statute of limitation.
Halos lahat ng mga cases meron ganyan. So that's our episode.
That was the episode for second episode sa atin natin.
Hope you enjoy our episode and
yes.
Also watch our previous episodes.
Yeah, check that out.
Especially the last one, Jack the Ripper.
So
marami kayong matututunan.
Always be reminded mga kaibigan na our show will our episodes will always be available every Friday, I think 12 noon. Philippine Standard Time. Philippine Standard Time, every uploaded yan. And also with following up with the audio
Spotify
audio version after a couple of minutes lang. Yeah. Ano pa ba? Yun.
Follow us on Facebook. na medyo
How was the episode, guys?
comment nyo sa down below.
Ano ba na dito na-enjoy niyo ba yung episode na yun? Yun na nga. Always check our new videos every Friday. This is our Freaky Friday, Freaky Friday episodes. Previously was the Thursday episodes, Thursday thrillers. This is the Freaky Friday episodes brought to you by the DarkRoom podcast.
I'm Rick.
I'm Marky.
The DarkRoom podcast.